Many of the key policies pushed by Florida GOP Governor Ron DeSantis simply do not reflect a push for freedom in any reasonably objective sense. That list ranges from his infamous push to limit discussions of sexual orientation and gender identity in classrooms to the more recently unveiled proposal in the legislature that would knock out entire majors and minors at state colleges and universities. DeSantis went to Southern California this weekend for a speech at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library promoting a new book by the Florida governor, and protesters showed up. Somebody even used spray paint to write "Ron the Fascist" on a sign near the library's entrance, and that sentiment, comparing DeSantis and his policies to fascism, also showed up in chants from some of those assembled, according to the Washington Post. The Post identified a group of protesters in the generally Republican area as numbering about 100. John Lapper, who was involved in demonstrations, described some of the national threats from the governor and his rise, both in terms of its potential and what's already transpired. "His agenda is not welcome here," Lapper said. "In all my years, I've not seen a more deplorable agenda against so many things that we stand for. That divisiveness is not what the country needs. We need a functional Congress. We need people to come together. And DeSantis is he's anti a lot of things, but he's also not the person to bring us together." In his actual speech, DeSantis hit predictable notes, like discussing, and touting, the dismissive response by his gubernatorial team to the spread of COVID-19. When common sense suddenly became an uncommon virtue, Florida stood as a refuge of sanity, a citadel of freedom throughout the United States and indeed throughout the world, DeSantis told attendees, sounding like a wannabe cult leader who's become very high on his own metaphorical supply. Other protests have also followed DeSantis's policies and travels, like the demonstrations on the streets of Philadelphia when the governor recently trekked to the historic city to accept an award from a private organization headquartered there. Elected officials joined those demonstrations, as they have in Florida, where protesters have assembled outside the state capitol. College students around the state also recently participated in walkout protests as DeSantis seeks to force an end for support at these institutions for diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI as it's known, along with critical race theory, besides pushing new demands covering areas like how American history would be taught in general edition. Under a proposed bill, that would be limited to depicting much of the country's background in what's ultimately a positive light, no matter the slavery, colonization, genocide, and more.